In frozen New England, women start to vanish one by one.
I remember running, asking, was that my Aunt Loretta?
There were other homicides of females, similar in nature.
A city in panic.
Oh my God, why is he picking up the pace?
And a killer one step ahead.
Every one of these women was murdered in a cold, heartless manner.
You start to look at everyone. Everyone's a suspect. Everyone's guilty.
With stakes this high, anything can happen. And it does.
The young man pounced and then pummeled him with punches. The worst serial killer in Massachusetts history.
Winter pummels the working-class city of Springfield, Massachusetts.
Springfield winters in general can be brutal. You think you've seen the worst, but it always somehow turns out worse than what you thought.
The snow was so deep, we opened our back door and the snow fell into the house. Brutally cold.
The brutal cold doesn't freeze crime.
The city is like every other city in America. It's had its periods of time where it has been safer and periods of time where there's a little more danger and it's been a little darker.
The winter of 1998 will prove to be one of the darkest. 38-year-old Loretta Daniels has always called the city home. Only 4'11", the feisty youngest of 11 siblings is fondly referred to as Little Bit.
She was full of laughter and life, and she had an infectious smile. She always seemed the glass half full, so to speak.
She and her older sister, Hattie, are especially close.
I was just like a mother to her. She was nice and pleasant and wouldn't harm a fly. She would make you smile. It wouldn't be a day past that, I didn't see her. And if I didn't see her, she'd always call me.
On January 31st, 1998, no call comes.
I didn't hear from her. I started asking my other sisters, had they seen him? And my sister, Dolores, said that she hadn't seen him like the day before.
Dolores explains she ran into Loretta that evening. The man might have been just a friend. Everything seemed fine. A second day passes with no word.
We knew something wasn't right because nobody had heard from her in a couple of days. She didn't call me. So then I got in my car, went over to my sister's house to pick them up so we could start looking for Loretta.
They go to talk to Loretta's friends.
And they hadn't seen her.
It's possible Loretta decided to skip town for a while. The two sisters share a bank account.
So then we went to the bank. And the money was still in the bank. So then we really got concerned, about what was happening.
On the third night, Hattie has a disturbing vision.
I seen Loretta sitting down with her legs crossed. Had her hand out, trying to reach my That's the last thing I've seen of her. And I knew something had done happened to her.
She calls Springfield police and files a missing persons report. But before an investigation can begin, a man walking downtown makes a chilling discovery.
This poor woman was found partially clad near the postal station in an alleyway in Mason Square, which is a prominent square.
Another resident, a minister, covers the young woman.
Out of respect, I believe, for another human being, which I found to be a touching aspect of a horrendous crime.
She was a black female found lying on her back.
The crime scene investigators were able to tell that it appeared to have been a manual strangulation.
Her body was positioned in an unusual way. Her boots were kind of placed orderly next to her body. She was sexually assaulted and strangled. And that is what was confirmed by the coroner.
It's important to see whether it's apparent she put up a fight, if our attacker could have been injured, scratched, anything along them lines.
No sign of defensive wounds. Even before an ID is made, Loretta's nephew sees a breaking report on TV about a body.
The news is on. It's on the news. And I remember saying to myself, that's my Aunt Loretta. I just got that gut feeling. And I remember running to that place asking, was that little bit? Was that my Aunt Loretta?
That's my Aunt Loretta.
We haven't got any information on this yet.
They called and told me they found the body. And I told them that was my sister. I knew it was.
I was devastated, speechless, and you just want to know what happened and how did it happen and, and why.
I cannot imagine how would another person take another person's life.
Our jobs as investigators at that point would be to canvass the area, looking for witnesses.
They find no one who saw or heard anything, and hope the autopsy will reveal more.
During Loretta Daniels' autopsy, I was assigned to assist the ME, and it was discovered that she had a cloth item down her throat.
A sock, likely her own. It contains seminal fluid, but there's no suspect to compare it to. Detectives try to identify and question any male seen with Loretta around the time of her death. No one admits knowing anything about the crime.
Well, look, there are no other questions. Can I go home now?
And investigators find nothing tying any of them to it. As they work, some detectives come to a troubling realization. The murder of Loretta Daniels seems eerily familiar. Within the past 4 months, and nearby, 2 other women were killed.
Similar homicides, sexual assault, strangulation. Every one of these women was raped, assaulted, and murdered in a cold, heartless manner.
And that's when one of the investigators said, this isn't sounding good. We may have a serial murder.
During a harsh Springfield, Massachusetts winter, Loretta Daniels goes missing. A until her body turns up in a downtown alley near the post office.
The place that they did find her, some place that you just walk past every day and you just would never think that they would find a body there, never mind my aunt's body.
She'd been raped, strangled, and had a sock stuffed in her throat.
I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. I didn't want to believe it.
She wouldn't have hurt anyone, so it boggled my mind that she would be a victim to that type of brutality.
Who could have done something like that and why?
Because of the way Loretta was killed, they wonder if her slaying might be connected to two others. 3 months earlier, and just blocks away from where Loretta was found,
There was a homicide on Spring Street, white female, no identification. She was also found in a state of undress. She was also found outside in an alley.
she's identified as Danielle Taylor.
She was bound and gagged. And that, to me, had this sadomasochistic qualification to it.
A clue to the killer's psychology, but not his identity.
She had tissue forced down her throat that was non-visible from the open mouth. That had to be found by the medical examiner. The same held true for Loretta Daniels on State Street. She had a sock forced down her throat, which could not be seen until examined by the medical examiner.
Like the sock from Loretta's autopsy, the tissue contained seminal fluid. As with Loretta, there were no witnesses. A week after that, another victim. Amanda Lawson, 38 years old, just like Loretta.
She was found in her home, 2 blocks from the police station, going up the hill on Worthington Street.
She lived there with her child, who actually made the discovery. The killer left her deceased body in such a position where the son, that minor son, was going to find his mother. And that's something no son should find.
She was raped, manual strangulation, and there was also a sock underneath her body that contained seminal fluid.
In 3 crime scenes, 2 socks and a tissue, all with bodily fluids.
It's kind of a strange coincidence. That would indicate to us that the women, they were raped and the sock or other item was used to clean himself afterwards.
There's one more sickening truth.
There was evidence that there was post-mortem sexual relations with these victims.
Detectives sent the socks and the tissue to the lab to try to extract DNA evidence.
Back then, DNA was relatively new science. It involved collecting vials of blood from people and submitting them to the lab. And the process of developing that profile, it took a long time.
Are the 3 murders really connected?
It was too early to jump to that conclusion. Until the science came back, we kept an open mind.
The community was basically like, okay, we need some answers. Or even if it's just one person you want to find out, but when it's multiple people that are getting killed, we need to have some kind of answers.
None of the victims had defensive wounds, and no witnesses saw or heard any struggle.
We focused our attention to male subjects who would blend in the community, someone that these women would befriend, look to spend time with.
The police chief at the time, Paul O'Meara, assigned a heavy uniform presence in these neighborhoods, as well as an awful lot of undercover officers.
We worked with a lot of people on the streets, in the neighborhoods, all over the city. and we were getting cooperation